One question I always like to ask is how long can I sustain this relationship without becoming resentful? It's a question I also ask my clients when they're in a impasse with someone in their life. How long can I sustain this relationship without becoming resentful? And there's a component of resentment that you may not realize that you are solely responsible for. Let's talk about it. Guys, what's going on? Welcome to the Bird Brain Podcast, where the goal is to rise above it all, stay elevated, create that infinity up your you. I'm your host, Isaiah, and Valentine's Day was recently, and I completely forgot. I usually like to do like a little self-love thing or something around that, but it's funny because I was just out in the world doing my thing and just existing in the most loving way, and it was great. I made it a point to write a horror story as I do Friday the 13th because it was Friday the 13th. So I was like, oh man, I got to write a story. And I made sure to do that. It was just something for me. And I felt good about it. You know, it's just those little things. I want you to ask yourself, how did you show yourself love? And I also want us to understand that to show love to yourself also means existing in healthy relationships. That is a part of self-love. Self-love doesn't mean self-isolation. That's not what that is. Self-love means healthy integration. Self-love means self-sufficiency. Self-love means interdependence. Self-love does not mean hyper-independence. It does not mean to prevent yourself from being connected to people properly. It does not remove that. That's not what self-love is. It's allowing healthy integration. Just want to be clear on that. But I also want you to understand is this concept of being hurt. You know, there are a lot of people that have been walking through the world. We've all been hurt by something. And there's a difference between people who use that as a ways to heal and make sure that they are not hurting someone else, and other people who use that as their shield to justify hurting people without returning to the scene and repairing. Being hurt doesn't give anyone a free pass to hurt others. And sometimes being nice isn't kindness, it's a trap. And I really want to talk about those concepts today, especially, you know, around Valentine's Day and, you know, love languages and treating people right and all these other things and feeling taken advantage of, feeling taken for granted, and how it becomes a very mixed bag of displaced responsibility and also awareness. Let's start with resentment. Here's the thing. Resentment is the result of needs going unmet over an extended period of time. And resentment isn't always about somebody else doing you wrong. More often, it's a signal, a warning light that says, I'm moving and I'm giving more than I should. That's what resentment is. And you can spot it. You can spot it because when you start to resent a person, your engagement with them becomes very sensitive, very prickly, very, very, very tender. And anything that this person does ticks you off. Anything that they do ticks you off. Okay? They breathe wrong. They blink too many times. It's an issue. And why is that? Well, because the thing that needs to be addressed, I haven't addressed. Resentment is the result of needs going unmet. So if there's something that I've been needing to say and I've been biting my tongue, or I have not created boundaries because I demand that somebody else makes an uncomfortable change before I do, resentment builds, right? Is displaced responsibility. And people don't realize, we never think about ourselves as a vehicle of change in the ways that we demand it from others. We expect others to be healed, to come correct, to be fully present, and we kind of sit on our hands. There should be an eagerness from other people to just get it, to learn, to adapt, to adjust, to grow up. Meanwhile, the fact that we are so bothered in the relationship with them is because we are not adapting. We are not growing up. We are not making adjustments. We are eager to be accommodated. I want you to think about a time you felt resentful recently. Was it because somebody mistreated you or because you said yes to something you didn't want to? Resentment loves a person who self-abandons. Resentment will find so much real estate in the heart of a person who does not self-advocate, in the heart of a person who tries to get everybody to like them, in the heart of a person who has no sense of self-respect and fears abandonment. And it starts small, right? Helping out at work, saying yes to a favor, agreeing to plans, always being the most understanding person, always being willing to be shifted and malleable, right? To bend to somebody else's will, even if it costs you something. And it turns into frustration, anger, bitterness, confusion, sadness, and despair. And the kicker, it can happen even when no one is actively trying to hurt you. That's what we need to realize. Resentment doesn't necessarily require other people's awareness or acknowledgement. It's an inside job. No one ever has to be aware of anything because a lot of times we have given people a role that they didn't even sign up for. They have no idea that they're playing a role. No idea. And then we become resentful when they are not fulfilling that role, right? Where the casting director is like, yo, you keep missing your lines. And I'm like, wait, what lines? I didn't get a script. You're like, well, damn it. This is my project. What do you mean? Right? Get the lines. And they're like, what lines? Or they're just existing and you're calling action. And they're like, wait, what? Right? Resentment is the result of needs going unmet. And a lot of times we want people to just get it. We want people to just figure it out because it prevents us from having to do the uncomfortable work of an uncomfortable conversation, a boundary, asking for what we need and the potential for us to get rejected. We do everything but the thing necessary. And what about people pleasing? Because that carries into it. Right? People pleasing feels good in the moment. You're being quote unquote kind, helpful, accommodating. But over time, it can drain you emotionally and leave you feeling used. However, a person can only get from you what you're willing to give, right? People pleasing teaches others what you're willing to do. It is not teaching them how you want to be cared for. It's teaching them that they can neglect you. It's teaching you that they can get everything from you without ever having to step up. And resentment grows when expectations aren't met. So here's a question. What's the one thing you keep doing for others out of obligation that doesn't actually serve anyone? I want you to really think about that, okay? And when you are hurt, what are you actually hurt by? Because the person was probably just being themselves the entire time. And that's not an excuse. That's not even a pass, right? Because sometimes people are selfish. They don't care about others and they just move through life in that way. But you knowing that, what have you done about it? And because you've been on the receptive end of that behavior, now let's talk about past wounds and double standards. When you are now saying, yeah, I've been hurt before. We've all been hurt. But sometimes we use it as a past pain as a license for current behavior. You know, it's the people that says, well, I've been hurt before, I've been let down, so don't hurt me, but you should understand when I hurt you. Or in friendships, I forgive instantly because I've suffered, but I expect you to always be perfect. And this definitely creates a double standard and more resentment, not just for them, but for you too. And the key really is awareness, recognizing when your past is justifying behavior that wouldn't meet your own standards if someone else did it to you. The thing is, nobody likes being mistreated. Nobody you meet likes to be mistreated. But we will make an exception to the rule when it comes to how we show up. Every single time. And it's important to clock that, right? Everybody wants to be in the care of somebody else, but we want to be careless with everybody else. Unless it suits us, unless it benefits us. So how do you reclaim that? First of all, you got to notice where resentment shows up and where you overgive. You got to clock it when you start becoming resentful, because it feels, one of the things I think is recognizable when resentment is starting to build. I'll give you a mental image. I'm trying to think of a good one. You ever see those characters, and I'm gonna try my best with it. You ever see those characters whose eyes kind of like get very narrow? They get very small, and it's like they're just kind of like piercing. Resentment kind of has that energy to it, right? Your eyes narrow, your breathing gets a little bit more short, or you start holding your breath more. There's a tension you have where you feel your thoughts, they're ruminating, or they're just like perpetually negative. They're always indicators of resentment. Your annoyance level is much higher. Anything becomes everything. And when that starts to happen, resentment is building. So you pause. What need is not being met? What need am I not making sure I advocate for? What am I demanding somebody else just figures out because I don't want to deal with the discomfort of saying something? It's lazy, right? Check the narrative. Is this really about someone else, or is it about your choices? Who do you keep choosing to be in a relationship with because they fulfill the prophecy of you never having to do better? Right? Set clear boundaries. Saying no isn't unkind, actually is very necessary. Because when we say yes to things that aren't for us, we're saying no to ourselves. And when we continue to say yes when we don't want to, we are holding other people hostage without them knowing. They're being set up for failure. They're being set up for failure because they don't know that you have an aversion to this thing. And it's not to say that you can't be inconvenienced or be willing to make effort, because relationships are on a certain level inconvenient. If somebody's always doing, well, I'm gonna just do for me and I'm gonna say no all the time, like, you're not gonna have a relationship. And hopefully you're cool with that when you now have a need, right? There has to be a balance, a checks and balance. But over giving and overextending yourself is not it. You know, the whole giving without expectations, you got to be more mindful of that, because that's how you will be ran dry. That's how you'll be taken advantage of. And that's how you become careless, and you won't have what you need for the relationships that do deserve your effort. Reflect on past hurt. Let it inform your boundaries, not justify breaking them. Okay? Stop making yourself an exception to your own rule. If you don't like how you've been treated and mishandled by people, you shouldn't be out here doing it. Because once you do that, your argument, your claim is null and void. We do not get to go through this world hurting people in the ways that we've been hurt, knowing how much it impacted us, knowing we are willing to tell the story about our survival. Resentment is often a mirror showing where you're overextending. People pleasing can feel virtuous, but it can backfire if it ignores your needs, because a lot of times people pleasing is manipulating a situation to your favor. Past wounds are teachers, not permission slips. In this week, it might be worth noticing one place where you've been overgiven or letting past pain dictate your behavior. Healthy relationships, honest relationships that we say we want, start with self-respect. A lot of times people are not looking for honest connections. They're looking for comfortable ones. Okay. Energy is precious. Energy is currency. So protect it. Invest in it properly. And watch how the world begins to treat you differently, because you are treating yourself differently. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Take flight.